Hello everybody, I'm Victoria Baylor. I'm stooped down a little bit low. We are in my sewing studio again. This week, I am one half of the duo, the Tailor and The Dressmaker. So you have found yourself at the Tailor and The Dressmaker show. Welcome, hi. If you're returning, howdy y'all. Good to have you back. If you're a newbie, thank you for taking some time to tune in to us. My wonderful co-host, Gentleman Jim, the Master Tailor, is out of town right now. He has a birthday on Monday. I'm not going to even tell you his age. I think he told you his age. I think he's turning 72, 73. Young chap. But he is enjoying himself away and he deserves a break. He's been working like crazy lately. So we send love to Mr. Jim in his absence. So again, I'm here, Victoria. I'm going to head up this week's broadcast. Sorry, this one is a little bit late. I don't know about you guys. Weather's been a little bit touch and go. We were forecasted to have crazy weather today, and it is like completely quiet with a little bit of a drizzle. So I don't even know what part of the tropical storm we got. Maybe like the tail tip, or is it still coming? Anyhow, I hope you guys find yourselves dry, safe, and all that. So we're going to get into today's broadcast, where I'm going to pick up where we left off on last week, where I told you about my nifty cutting table that actually is pinnable. So we'll get a close-up in a little bit, but as you can see, oh, that noise is my 16-year-old dog laying on the floor wheezing. So yes, you hear any weird sounds, that would be, she's my audience member today. But anyway, so my cutting table is pinnable because if you watched last week's broadcast, I don't have my two boards here. We adopted a guinea pig for my daughter's birthday. She needed a sister, so we got one. And the plywood board is supporting her huge cage. So anyhow, so this referred to last week's broadcast, but anyway, this table consists of, there is a plywood, I think it's about 1/2 inch thick plywood board underneath, and on top there is a particle / kind of homosote, I think is a trademark name, but it's pretty much like a glorified particle board, and that's sitting on top. Someone asked me before I added this top layer, my cutting table was 28 inches wide. Now it is at 40 inches, which is really great. You know, ideally in my dream studio, my cutting table will be like 60 or 80 inches wide. Oh, there's a stock market. You know, there it is. Stock market bell. Okay, so I will do a little bit of a close-up to show you exactly how I use this surface, which is really, really great, and maybe you'll be encouraged to make one yourself. But before then, there was a couple things that people had a question about. One being, my iron. So I use a gravity feed iron. You'll see it right here. It's really great. Very simple to put up. I use one of those over-the-door hangers. Hopefully you can see that there. But this is the water reservoir this is the tank for the iron. And essentially you keep it full up above a minimum level. And it's a steam generating iron. It's really, really great in that water's just fed through the tube as needed. And then there's a button. So this is a little bit different. You can't sit this iron up. It's a whole different beast. It always has to sit down. But it generates steam very quickly and in really strong bursts. So you might be able to see that. Really, really great. Has a special iron shoe cover on it that's non-stick, kind of like Teflon. You can adjust the temperatures on the back. Really, really great. And it sits on kind of like a silicone cover over here. But to me, someone asked, I used to have a Rowena, kind of like the sit down into the reservoir. I don't use a basic iron that sits up. I don't have any issues with drippage, none of that stuff. To me, you can sew very professionally, but if you don't have a professional grade iron, you might as well throw it out, because it's the pressing, believe it or not, that actually lends the garment to looking very professional. If your seams aren't straight, obviously if you press it, you'll have crooked seams. But if your seams are straight and you half press or you press inadequately, then you don't have a professional looking garment. So I love, love, love my iron. I've had a steam generating iron for years. I got mine for about $100. That's because I had a hookup. But you can usually get them between, you can get a $100 one. This is like a better grade one. So it's probably, might have been like $160, but I got it for $100 or maybe $125. But you can get decent irons, $125, $130, worthy investment. So that was a question. I addressed my cutting table dimensions, 40 inches wide and however feet, I think it's over 2 yards that way. And then there was a question about sewing sweater knits, and I don't have one. Let's see. Anyhow, sewing sweater knits. Let's just go off the cuffs here. So knits are my specialty. Usually there shouldn't be a problem with sewing sweater knits. It just depends on how big the holes are in the knit itself. So if you have a sweater knit that your sewing machine can just sew through very easily and it doesn't have like really big gaping holes, you should be able to sew that as normal. I actually would even use a regular needle. I wouldn't use like a micro needle or something that could kind of puncture the fibers of the yarn used for the knit. They do make ballpoint needles, but they've been phased out with some companies. It depends on who you're with. I think Smet used to make, they're the only people whose needles I use. Hold on a second, I'll show you. I'm not sure if they make a ballpoint anymore. I think they might have Smet needles. I always use those. Only ones I use for my sewing machines are very good, durable. I think it's a German company if I'm not mistaken. Don't quote me on that. But anyway, but sewing sweater knits shouldn't be problematic. If it is, and it turns out you do have larger pore size, hole sizes in the knits as they're knitted together, I would consider using something like either an interfacing or something on the seam, even like a clear elastic to kind of stabilize that area as you're sewing from one side of the knit to the other. You could put something to reinforce that seam area just to make sure you don't have any slippage. Hope that makes sense. Aside from that, I always usually use clear elastic, especially like in the shoulders of any knit I make. Anything that stretches in the areas where I don't want it to stretch, I use clear elastic. And you guys have, if you've followed me, you've seen me do it. And I'm trying to grab a piece. Yep, right here. Stuff like this. So as you can see, it stretches, but it doesn't stretch crazy, so it helps stabilize those areas. So I hope that makes sense. Okay, I think that's all the questions we were asked. So I'll give you a close-up of my usage of my transform cutting table. But before I do, here is tracing paper close-up. You kind of see this is from Richard the Thread. I buy the blue and I buy the white. Blue for the darker fabrics, white for the lighter ones. Or switch that. Blue for the lighter fabrics, so it'll show up, and then white for the darker ones, so you could have that that opposite color. You know what I'm trying to say. Also, I use, let's see, so if I were doing pattern work and I use this table, which is very helpful for that. I love craft paper. Someone was leaving out of town and gave me a whole roll of this. Goody gumdrops. I got so excited. Even before I was even making patterns. This stuff is awesome. So that's what I use for pattern work. And as I explained last week, I use specialized thumbtacks to go into this special table. So I have my pattern making materials, accoutrements. So this is their usual, wheel. So this is what you trace around to actually add any kind of lines and stuff like that to the pattern. I have that, and then you can use specialized marking pens to do whatever. But anyhow, we'll do a quick demonstration. I'll show you the 2 ways I use this pattern, or this cutting table, pinnable, new pinnable cutting table. One way is I'll do pattern manipulation work. So that's one way. And then the second way is I will use tracing paper to transfer information to fabric, and it's easier to do when I can pin it to the table. So come on, let's take a quick close-up and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so now I've repositioned the camera. I'm actually behind the camera. It's easier to work. One thing I forgot to mention, I apologize, is for the person asking about my gravity feed iron. You can get it from most professional tailoring or supply stores, such as waywack.com. So there's a lot of places you can shop around. I would buy brand new. Personally, I buy a lot of used equipment, but I would buy brand new just if you want to make sure it's working good. Let me just get a little bit more position here. There we go. You can see this okay. All right, so one quick demonstration is let's pretend. Let's do pattern manipulation work. So this is some of the craft paper. This is actually graph paper on top of my pinnable surface. So what I'm gonna do is just lift it so you know I am not making this up. See, that's the pinnable part. Oh, let's flip that back up. and a pendant. See, that's really stable, which is great. Okay, so I put something on top just to smooth it out, because again, the fibers from the pinnable board can kind of snag stuff. Someone else made a really interesting point. You want to make sure whatever particle board you use is definitely, I think, indoor use friendly. It's kind of health friendly, because I guess, you know, you can make a lot of housing material that isn't. So I hope you can see this. This stands out. But let us pretend, and this is where, which is really great, you can fix anything there. So I love that. You can actually iron that paper too, but whoop, I dropped one. Anyway, so this is fixed here. Let us pretend, and I have a small scale sloper pattern. So let's pretend that we want to trace this, and then, actually let me pop that back up. So there's lots of cool things you can do with this board. I love it, and I love that I had the opportunity, and still have the opportunity to work in costuming with the ballet company, because I learned all these really cool tricks. I think costumers have a lot of neat tricks up their sleeve. They kind of are forced to, but okay. So this is our front skirt sloper. This comes off of my little mini me. I have a little mini half scale dress form. So this is the sloper part. So let's just say I'm going to pin that down. Say I want to transfer this to this because I want to modify the pattern. Simple, right? Pretty straightforward. Yes, and it will be. I'll show you why. So there's our little tracing wheel. So I can go over that and see how you can just stabilize things so easily when it's pinnable. Versus, I mean, I normally use cans when I'm cutting out something. I use my little canned goods and I put it on top. But it kind of gets in the way. They're really big, right? So instead, just do this. Okay, so it's down. Really great. And then I could just kind of go over. So I can go over and trace with my tracing wheel a little bit more accurately. I'm in a bit of a hurry right now. I'm trying to do this demonstration. So please don't hold it against me. I can use a tracing wheel. So let's just do that quick little illustration. Okay. That, and then, all right, let's do this waistline. And let me come down. Side seams. And of course, you'd be way more careful than my quick demo. Okay, and then there we go. And then I can do the bottom. So now I've essentially transferred these lines to my new, you can see the serrated lines. See that? You can see the impression, and there's small little holes in there. You just probably can't see. But anyway, that's really cool. So now I have a new pattern, and if I wanted to go and modify this pattern in any way, I can trace it. What we like to do, or if I wanted to keep it as is and add seam allowance, look, I've already pinned it in place. I can see my pattern, so I'm going to actually go and trace it. Make it real simple. So I'm going to trace it over. And then I usually use a ruler to do this. So again, this is just a quick demo, guys. No accuracy needed for this quick demo. Just want to give you a quick idea of what I'm doing. All right, trace, trace, trace. Okay, and then this. And then if I want to go back and add seam allowance, I can. So if I make this 1/2 inch on the sides. And it's funny, when we do this in costuming, you don't have to get all crazy and like line everything. So, and then if I want 1 inch at the bottom, because that's the hem, because you always want to add a little bit extra, we can do that. And then 1/2 inch. So you kind of get my drift, and see how, notice how nothing is moving, which is awesome. And actually, to be quite honest, I don't know why I have it inside. There we go. And this would probably be a bigger sheet. So now I don't have to move anything. Just kind of go around. And everything's positioned. Isn't that fantastic? I sound like an infomercial. So anyway, so now you see where we're going with this. So this is the spectacular, and see that's kind of a curve. So you kind of do that ditty and move it with the curve like that. And I love these clear, I mean, golly, give me a moment to make a plug. And this is really great. So now, say for instance, this is our now new pattern. You can go back in, cut this out, and then actually trace it on something else. And actually what we'll do is, believe it or not, I'm going to demonstrate now how to use the tracing paper with this new pattern and transfer the lines from pattern to fabric using the tracing paper, and of course using our pinnable board. So this didn't move at all. Really great. It's been stabilized, didn't have any kind of worry about anything shifting. And of course, if you do pattern making, you know how sensitive that is. You don't want anything to shift. So now let's move on to tracing paper, which is awesome. And the cool thing about this, I'm going to use only a small section. This stuff lasts forever and a day. I swear, people probably could sell it used. I've seen, I work with Miss Pat doing costume work, and I've seen her paper. I mean, I swear, there's lines from everything. It looks like a road map, and the stuff still works. So it's a really good investment. So okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to slide that open like that. We're going to pin it in place, and I'm not worried about messing up my new, like to call virgin paper, because it is about to be used, and it will be used going forward because I have lots of projects coming up. All right, so we're going to pin that into place, and then what we'll do is, silly me, of course, it only cut off a small part. So let's just pray this works, y'all, because it's a very narrow piece, but I can see it on the side. Okay, and then we'll take the other half of this and put it on top as such, like that, and pin that into place. And okay. Let's move that out of the way. Alright. So again, all this would be professionally done and more carefully done if I wasn't just doing a quick demo. Hopefully you can see everything where my hands are. Okay. So this is really neat. So what we'll do now, so all that is, we got the fabric under there. It is stabilized. You can pin it, and actually, believe it or not, I don't use, technically I use, you can use these little smaller pins because they don't stick up as much. So this is just for the demo, but these are the steel pins. Let me show you that we use them in costuming, and they're very fine. Let's see. Oh, 1 second. Okay. These are the Dorcas pins. Wow, they're a little expensive too, believe it or not, but they are still dressmakers pins. And you get a bunch of them, and I swear my poor child has stepped on more of these than she probably should have. But you can also use those to pin like that. So that's how we actually fixed everything down. So you see how that doesn't stick up at all, and you're pushing it down very securely, and you push it in. See that? So now you don't have this pin here. So let's pop these out, and let's just put these in. And this makes it even easier. I don't know if you can see. You can see my hands. Okay, great. I'm gonna feel for where that ends at. Okay, I think it's over here. So I'm gonna put a couple of Dorcas there as well, and hopefully we can get everything in here. This is kind of wide. Okay, so this is our new pattern piece. It might be a little bit too big for our little demo wedge here, so this is about this wide. Okay, so I'm going to put this here because what I want to do is ensure that I can definitely trace it. And what I'll do is pin it down. All right, and then I'm going to trace it. And what you can do is you could just free trace it like that. And then you have to be careful about what tracing wheel you use too, and how good it is at delivering your marks through your fabric and through both layers. Some tracing wheels have like less of a serrated edge. They're a little bit duller, and they might actually work a little bit better instead of getting small spoke holes. And then there's other wheels like this one where you have the small spoke holes, and then I just kind of rub it through all the way through, back and forth, and you have to test it because sometimes you can just go one time over and it's sufficient instead of going back and forth, but I want to ensure that this line gets transferred. Okay, and again, if you were cutting this out, the only line well, in the costuming world, and actually even when you do pattern work, you will actually label the seam line and then also the seam allowance line, so you'll know how much seam allowance you have, and then you'll know exactly where your stitch should be. So it's good to know. All right, let's pop this out and let's see about doing a quick reveal. So you can see the line went straight through the pattern paper, up, up, up. Let's remove and see that didn't even shift. So can you imagine what that's like when you're working with chiffon? Oh my gosh, it is awesome because nothing moves. So you never have to worry about the stuff sliding off the table. Yay, and there it is. And I probably went too hard on my pattern paper. You can see the marks there. So there's the pattern. Let's put that. And it's here. It's like a cooking show gone right. Yes. There's my traced both sides. Transferred seamlessly, and then of course that would be the wrong side of your fabric is shown. You don't have any weird smearing with this wax paper, which is awesome. Sorry, I guess I should have really pressed that section. I pressed the other section. There you go. So that's our pattern transferred. So these are the two different ways you can use this table. Another way, let me just show you, or actually just to reiterate the first way, to give you a quick illustration before I send you on your merry way. One of our ballet costume last year was let's see, this dress here with really cute sleeves, and we were sent a close-up. These are all the swatches. You've seen this book before if you follow me on Periscope. I gave you guys kind of an inside look. But one of the pictures that was sent for the sleeve of that dress, this is a close-up, it was kind of like a really puffy sleeve. Okay, so I ended up with a standard sleeve pattern, and I had to pretty much transform it to look like this. So this is where using this kind of pinnable board, it's really, really helpful, and I'll demonstrate. I don't have the actual pattern. Darn, I let someone borrow it, so I don't have it right here. But this is the book I use to make the pattern adjustment. And this book being one I've showed you guys before. It's really cool. It doesn't have the exacts on how much to spread things, but it gives you the general picture, which is really phenomenal. So to make this sleeve right here, this is a puff sleeve variation. See right here? So you take your standard sleeve and it gets cut up into pieces, and then an extra bell of area gets added at the top, and it gets wider at the bottom. I made this sleeve. See all these sections? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sections. I had to make these cuts. How do you think I made that sleeve successfully? Well, I cut it and then I pinned it into this board. And then I was able to separate it individually. See how it's pinned there? So it's already assuming you're gonna make this and pin it. There's little pin marks. Pinned it into the board. And then drew around it all this on top of tracing paper, removed these little segments, and then I had a new sleeve. And of course that's on the fold line. And it was really phenomenal. And that was I think it was a great illustration for me to see how nifty it is to have a actual cutting table that has a pinnable surface. Man, it came in handy. And again, this is like the final pattern, and I actually have the pattern and all the separate little pieces, but I just wanted to show you kind of what it looks like in action. So a lot of great potential for this, and I hope that was a good illustration. Here you go. You can see you can actually make patterns. Just quick review, and pin them into the board and do tracing and adjustments as needed. And you also can do a lot of tracing work using tracing paper and actually pinning your tracing paper, bottom side facing up, top side facing down, having your fabric sandwiched in between, and then as I showed, layering the pattern on top, tracing around it with your tracing wheel or whatever you decide to use, and then you have a great piece of fabric that has all the lines you want. I mean, we add everything from dart marks to everything. And then again, I actually go in and do the seam allowances. So the side seam might be wider than, you know, the waist, so on and so forth. You know, there's variations depending upon what you're sewing. So that's that. So okay, let's zoom out and let's close this thing out. Okay, I hope you had, let me just bend down. I don't know how tall that camera is, but I hope you had as much fun as I did with today's demonstration. Really, really great. God bless the person that says my sewing room looked clean. It's already starting to look like it is falling apart. Move this out the way. Real quick also, some other fun pattern work. So say for instance, if you were even taking a skirt, so that skirt I showed you, I was doing a little bit of playing around with, and I cut it, of course, to add flair to it. Well, it's so easy to do this pinned into the table with pattern or tissue paper underneath, and you can cut it, flare it, tape it down, and then just remove it with pins, and it's not flailing all over the place. So just some other ideas. Hopefully you'll consider getting this done. It's pretty inexpensive to do. I think, oh, I promised to look it up. I'm sorry. I think the boards together might have been about $40, so it's not too killing expensive. Last but not least, I want to announce something I'm super excited about, and I was hoping, I know Mr. Jim's out of town, we were going to announce it together, but someone asked me personally, and actually I've had this question for quite some time, someone was starting their own sewing business or actually had a sewing business for quite some time, and wanted to know exactly how I conduct my business, and how does one really get started, or even just set the foundations of interacting with clients well. Well, we have an answer to that question. I just started my sewing consult course. So basically the title of the course is Constructing Sewing Consults, or Conducting Sewing Consults the Successful Way. So usually a consultation is where your work begins with the client. How one does that will determine how successful their interactions with that client is. Well, I've put together a really cool course, like really cool, that actually showcases what I do from start to finish. And I have all the documents in that course, which is really neat. So everything from my business policy, there's a copy of that, from quote forms, I do work agreements, invoices, all of the samples of everything, a sample client plan, like how do I plan out working with a client from start to finish. Everything also from, let's see, logging in client information, note sheets on when you're getting started with them, how do you know what information to take down, invoices, is all professional. And again, these are documents I'm giving away in addition to over 2 hours of teaching materials explaining these and breaking them down. You can go in and completely customize these documents as your own, take out my logo, add your own. You are ready to fly. Really cool. And I also have a client consult script. So what kind of things do you say to your client when you're on the phone interviewing them, even when you're in person? I take out all the questions about that. It's all here. All the ways in which you kind of can like very professionally interact with your client. And then on top of that, I have a video about the 12 most popular potential client personalities that you'll interact with. And that's actually pretty cool. These are all the personality types you may see. From people that, are kind of like the know-it-all to the people that probably don't know what they're doing. It's kind of a lighthearted way of covering the different people you'll probably interact with. So my Conducting Successful Sewing Consults, or conducting, let me get it. I'm trying to say it. I got to say it 5 times fast. How to conduct successful sewing consults easily. That whole course is available now, so feel free to grab that. I will include a link at the bottom. Again, over 2 hours of really great information, all kinds of things to think about, from which pitfalls to avoid, everything. So I'm super excited to do it. As you can tell, I'm talking too long, so we'll end it. But I was so excited that people have been asking me forever, and I love to give resources that make it easy for people to do what they do. You've got the sewing work to do, but there's still the business. So let me help make that business part easy for you. Okay, well, with that being said, I think that concludes today's broadcast. As always, thanks for letting us into your homes. On behalf of Mr. Jim, I will say I also want to say farewell. On behalf of my co-host, Gentleman Jim, who is not here, who's traveling, happy early birthday to him. We love you, Gentleman Jim. We couldn't do what we do without you. You help definitely inspire us to be better sewers. We appreciate that. I would give a personal shout out to Wanda Hartley. You came to study with Mr. Jim for an entire week, and I did not run into you. I apologize. I've had a crazy week, and I didn't make it to the studio. So I just want to send my hellos and my regards. Lastly, stay dry wherever you are. Have a very blessed weekend. Enjoy your holiday weekend. Of course, you are gifted. You are wonderful. You are beautiful. Please use those God-given gifts to bless yourself and to bless others. So we love you, and we will see you next broadcast. Take care.